How's it going?
Good. Hey, man, I figured it was, are you in LA?
I am.
Yeah, because I figured it was going to be a little early for the camera and all that. So,
Yeah, I'm sorry we can't do more cameras for radio. Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love being camera ready for radio. It's the best.
all right. Sirius XM 106. It is Volume. Nick Carter here with one of my favorites, Emmy Award winner, Golden Globe winner, star of stage, screen, and now Zoom, Jeremy Piven in the building.
Yes.
How are you, man?
You know, when I was growing up, I was at the drama school, and one of our teachers said to us, he goes, you know, he was taking a shot at us visually, and he said, you know, here's the deal, guys. If you're fat, do radio. That's what he said. He himself was about a biscuit over 300 pounds. So I thought, does he own a mirror? I was confused. But now it's so interesting because every radio spot you do, you got to be camera ready. So even what he said doesn't hold up. You still have to be pretty and do radio. So nothing makes sense.
Yeah. Hey, are you still doing stand-up anywhere? I know you did some gigs at the beginning of the year outside of L.A. Did you play Texas recently?
I just got back from Texas. I did shows at the Improv in Houston, and I played San Antonio. Yeah, it was incredible. They're fully open as of today.
Yeah. I got to say, I applaud you because, you know, you come from an improv background and people assume that the next logical step is stand-up comedy, and it's really not.
No. No, I mean, stand-up is a very interesting, specific hybrid where you have to be a writer and a writer first because you're writing your own material. And a lot of those guys that you see, they became performers because they're writers. And so I kind of reversed engineered it. But yeah, I've been on stage improvising my whole life, and I've been trying to rewrite every script, you know, that I get my hands on if they'll allow me to contribute an option. And sometimes, you know, they don't, and it's all part of it. But so I've been writing on my feet, you know, my whole career. And now, you know, I get a chance to put it all to the test. I've been touring around doing stand-up, and I love it.
People are really ready to laugh, aren't they? I mean, people are just ready to let loose, aren't they?
Yeah. If you bomb now, you're really bad.
So, last call. I love it, man. You're one of the producers, so I already know this is a bit of a passion project for you. Does it bum you out that because of the time we're in, if anyone sees it in theaters, it's going to be a small minority, especially for a theater cat like yourself? It's got to be a little disappointing.
No, you know, that's what's so great about life. It's like, you know, you can receive anything any way you want to. You know, you can compare and contrast and hold on to your expectations. Wait a minute, why aren't we in 2,000 theaters? Or you go, hold on a second. That's not the way it is. We're reopening again. We're in 100 theaters. That's pretty cool for literally being in the middle of a plague. You know, we're in 100 theaters. So it's how you take information in. And by the way, I love complaining, but here's the problem with complaining. No one cares. No one cares. It's adorable when you complain because you just alienate people. It feels good for about a half a second. And then you look up and everyone's gone because they don't want to hear you complain anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Unless you're Larry David and you can do it better than anyone.
He has raised it to an art form. He really has. You know, the story is so relatable, especially to men. Like, I'm from Boston, came to New York to study theater at Circle in the Square. But if I go home tomorrow, there's like 7 guys named Sully who, if I want to find him, I know just what bars to look in because that's where I left him in like 1990. You know, God bless him, but just zero desire to evolve. I think we can all relate to that on some level.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people are going to see themselves or their situations or people they grew up with. This movie is a slice of life about a group of people that are, you know, just really don't want to grow up. My character Mick takes off and kind of makes something of himself and is incredibly ambitious, goes back home and wants to kind of gentrify the neighborhood and kind of wipe out his own people. and it's about coming to terms with who you are, what matters the most in this life. And yeah, those guys are just still there at the bar, and they refuse to grow up. And your initial response is, "What are you guys doing?" But it takes a lot of interesting turns, and it's raunchy, and it's not politically correct, and it's going to offend some people.
Well, that's what we're looking for too. You know, everything's too sanitized now, right? So the credits warmed my heart. Like the whole thing, it's kind of a love letter to the traditional family-owned Irish tavern, and apparently suburban Pennsylvania is just littered with them, you know? It's just...
Yeah, it is. And the guys that help produce it and write it, they're all from that neighborhood. Guys like Jamie Kennedy are from that neighborhood. So it's very authentic in that way. And it was a blast to shoot. And it's also a tribute to how to get it done yourselves, because it's an indie movie, you know? And so this is what has to happen now. You don't wait around for the big shots to okay you. You just make these movies happen yourself. It's a movie made by the people for the people. And yeah, it's really funny. And also I get to play with some of my heroes like Bruce Dern, who is such an absolute legend, you know. And so it was an honor to work with him. The great Taryn Manning, you know, from Orange is the New Black. She plays opposite me. And Kathy Moriarty from Raging Bull plays her mother.
Yeah, and shout out to Bruce Dern, man. He's almost unrecognizable in this. Jamie Kennedy, too. I think it wasn't until after The Irish Wake that I realized, I mean, I knew he was in it, but I was like, oh shit, that's Jamie Kennedy. It's fantastic.
Well, I mean, bless Jamie. That's not Jamie going, I'm going to go deep I'm a method actor and I'm going to disappear into this role. That's just what Jamie looks like.
Let me ask you, I mean, as a fan of yours, this is a prime example. Do you look to go against type these days because you've created some iconic roles that have become known as a type? Like I've seen it in casting breakdowns when I've read for stuff, you know, Jeremy Piven type, quick-witted, snarky, sarcastic. Yep. Do you look at some scripts and go, oh man, they just want me to be Jeremy Piven? Because the performance here Mick, is a bit subtle. I mean, there's definitely shades of that guy that we love to see, but it's a really nuanced performance this time.
Yeah, it's funny the way an actor's journey works. You know, who's Jeremy Piven? Oh, I love him. Get me a Jeremy Piven type. And then, wait, who's Jeremy Piven? You know, it's the life of an actor. I've even been up for roles where it said Jeremy Piven type and didn't get it. So, you know, I wasn't enough like myself. Yeah, man, you can just, you know, rail against the universe for being typecasted or any of that stuff. The reality is, you don't know who I am. And that's why I'm starting a podcast that'll be out soon. Just what you need, another podcast. It's called How You Live in J. Piven. Actually walking into my podcast room right now, and it's going to drop. And I interview people like Jamie Foxx and Tiffany Haddish, Mark Cuban. And so that, to me, selfishly, to interview these people that I love and respect, and then you get a sense of who I am, which I'm not even going to get ahead of myself, but people are going to be like, wait a minute, that's him? He's just a journeyman actor from Chicago? Yeah. And so there is no type. Now, can I play a fast-talking, over-the-top, type A, reactive Hollywood douchebag? You know, that was the role that was available, and that guy exists. He's Mark Wahlberg's agent. Ari Emanuel is one of the best in the game, and so you just play him. And the writing was brilliant, and the show was perfect timing and reached everyone. And I was in people's living rooms for a decade, and so from that, you know, I understand why people would latch on and love that character. Now I just play, you know, we got this movie coming out, Last Call, which, as you said, is a guy who is ambitious, just like Ari, goes out and does his thing, but then he has to come to terms with what really matters in this life. And that's where you're talking about the dimension and a real human being, emotionally accessible and all these things. I'm just a journeyman actor. And that's what I'm about to play a guy who is totally different. Speaking of Boston, he's from Boston, and he's totally different than anything I've ever played, and I'm excited for that. And it's my job to mix it up and to not repeat myself.
Nice. Being a Chicago guy, particularly a Chicago theater guy, Dern, he's a Chicago guy, and Jamie Kennedy as well. Did you find just a kinship with them on set? Because because of that background, I guess.
Jamie's actually from Philly. He's from the exact neighborhood where this movie is set.
Wow,
and
really?
If you notice, they got the accent, and it's, that's how he, this guys knew, okay, Jamie's from the neighborhood and they know him. And I didn't even think Jamie thought, I think he was kind of surprised by how good the movie is, to be totally honest with you. It's one of these moments. Jamie's he's a stand-up comic as well, and so funny. And you see in the movie, they give us room to improvise, and that's where you have, Jamie, who's like the doorman of the bar, and he's like, "We got a 3-stain policy, okay? You got more than 3 stains, you can't get in here." So there's a lot of really funny lines because they let us open it up and improvise. And listen, that's the key. People don't realize, like, a lot of these movies that you've seen, it wasn't necessarily on the page. And if you have improvisational actors or stand-up comics or whatever, you got to let them run a bit. And, whatever's the funniest and the most appropriate wins. Take your ego out of the equation. It might be the best script on the planet, but if it's a comedy and someone can beat it, then let's just make it funny.
Right. It's funny too, because I think most people had assumed that there was a lot of improv on Entourage, but I'd seen you in interviews and you said, no, I mean, that was all written on the page. And just to bring that to life so effortlessly and make it seem a flow like, it was improv. Wow.
Well, but that's nothing special that I did. That's just acting. Acting is, taking the written word and making it feel and seem totally improvisational. That's acting. I wasn't doing anything special. I was just doing my job. And it's a great honor to say those words. Doug Ellen crushed it. And, I had to go word for word. And it was my job, and I was so grateful for it. And ironically, today I'm going to go do the Victory podcast with the boys. It's a new Entourage podcast, and they wanted me to do a scene with a big old monologue from it. So I took Joyce Piven, my mom, who I always run lines with, and we ran some lines together. And it's so funny because there were people over, and I just start swearing and screaming. And my mom was just kind of very calmly just doing it with me. And they're like, isn't that weird to do it in front of your mom? I was like, no, she doesn't flinch because she's she's an artist. But imagine some of the things that I said as Ari Gold. I said all those things to my mom's face.
Phenomenal.
Which is insane.
Let me reintroduce you really quickly. The movie is Last Call, of course, the great Jeremy Piven. If you don't mind, I want to bounce around a little bit. I like Rock and Rolla. I love you and Ludacris together. And, I remember for a while, a lot of actors were like, I'm not working with rappers. What do you remember about working with Ludacris?
Well, first of all, I grew up listening to hip hop, and I was the only white boy on my football team. And I've heard that in my entire life, and really love old school hip hop, especially. And so I'm a fan. And he's a very smart guy. He's a real artist, and you could tell he was taking it seriously, and he was perfect for the role. And I don't know, man. I just don't. I'm not very judgy. It just doesn't happen. I was lucky enough to play with Common, his first role in Smokin' Aces,
right? And
both he and Luda, they're both incredibly talented, curious, hardworking guys. That's why they're so masterful at what they do. And yes, they mastered this other arena, but they were smart enough to put their ego aside and go, "I'm here to learn. Let's do this." And Luda was great from the jump, and the rest is history. Especially, and same with Common. So, I just feel like it doesn't matter where you come from. I think stand-up comics are different. They're a little more protective of their space, but with acting, I just feel like, okay, well, what do you got? Let's see what we're working with. So you can't ever judge someone.
Right. We're a talk channel about music, and we talk about this at some point every other week, it seems, on this show. I've talked to Leary about it. I've talked to Cuba Gooding about it. I've talked to Everlast about it. I've talked to Ice-T about it. Judgment Night. What do you remember about that soundtrack in particular? Just like, speaking of hip hop, the hip hop cats mashed up with these metal guys. I mean, it was revolutionary.
Yeah, that people to this day will mention that soundtrack. That was really, really cool. That soundtrack was ahead of its time. Taking, metal and speed metal and putting it together with hip hop and yeah, I love that movie. It was my first, we were kids. Leary's a bit older than us, but I was just a stage actor in Chicago, doing my thing, making about $50 a week, and you audition. And I'll never forget, I got the role while I was on my bike on Lakeshore Drive, picked up a payphone and got the word that I got. It was one of my first big movies ever. And I wish kind of the movie would have done better initially, so it would have gotten more attention for that soundtrack. But yeah, it was really fun. And I don't know what those guys said, but I got to shoot it in my backyard. There I was in Chicago. I remember the first scene up was Dennis Leary throwing me over the side of a building. And we're basically, in the heart of Chicago, and there were some sniper shootings on roofs that week. So the stakes were high. It's funny. I remember I was 27 years old or something when I shot that. And I'd stayed away from coffee, never had a cup of coffee, but then we started shooting nights, and it's 4:36 in the morning, crack of dawn, and now I'm yawning and wipe the cold from my eyes. Who is this page and me and why? It's my brother Pop. No, I digress. I had to look at Dennis Leary and, spit out this monologue at dawn, and then he kills me. And so you're like, yeah, where's the coffee? What's happening? I was a stage actor. I'd never done a night shoot. So that was really fun. And then they had to find my stunt double. And you don't know what you look like until you have to find someone to double you. And so, I'm like, what do I look like? You have some idea, but no, they couldn't find anyone that looked like me. They found this indigenous American Indian dude who had much better hair than me. Anyone does. And they had to kind of take his hairline back a bit. And, he had long, silky, hair. And so, yeah, I guess I looked it was interesting to see that happen. And they threw him off this building. God bless him. It was an incredible experience.
In the few minutes I have before I have to let you go, I want to thank you for adding to the lexicon many times over. I'm sure people walk up to you every day and ask if you want to hug it out. But I got to tell you, I have not been to a concert in the past 20 years where if a guy is wearing the shirt of the band we were there to see, some asshole didn't immediately walk up to him and say, don't be that guy. I mean, every time somebody's going to go, don't be that guy.
It's so funny you say that is Zach Penn, who wrote that movie. We were texting the other day, and I just keep saying to him, man, look, we need a PCU too. I mean, that movie was so ahead of its time, so prolific. Not prolific, that's not the right word. Clairvoyant.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, it's early. I apologize. No, I have a tiny brain. It's all good. So Zach was way ahead of his time with that movie, and he said, he's done a ton of movies. He's like, that line, he hears more than anything, and he's a very funny, prolific writer. So yeah, we need, because we're at a time right now where we're trying to navigate how to treat each other well, and I think instead of having more conversations, we're canceling people. And we're overcorrecting. And so we are as politically correct as we've ever been. So that movie, if there's ever a movie that deserves a sequel, Zach Penn, let's do it, buddy. Let's go. We'll grab the old crew. We'll grab David Spade and everyone from that movie, and we'll make, let's go PCU 2. Let's go.
That's funny. I wasn't even going to bring up Ari, but confirm or deny a rumor. There was a rumor that there was, before even the movie came out, there was a rumor there was going to be an Ari Gold spinoff series. I mean, again, to your point you were just making, I don't know how that would be possible to do today, but how close did you come to that?
I immediately went off and did Mr. Selfridge, which was a costume drama in London that is still playing overseas. And over here, we PBS put it out, which is basically like putting it in witness protection program. They just would rather no one see it. You know what I mean? And bless them, they're incredible. So, I was so honored to be a part of that. I could finally make my mom proud. They just are publicly funded and have no money, so no one knew it existed. So I was busy, and I didn't really know about a spinoff. And listen, people, Victory Podcast, the Entourage Podcast, is like number one, in many countries, and gaining momentum. So it's just showing you in real time. The fans haven't gone anywhere; they miss it. I think that it's funny you say, "Would you be able to get away with it today?" Well, I think people would want to see how you navigate that space today. Yeah. And also, last time I checked, it's also a business. So, people, if they want to do a show that's successful, that gets viewers, you might want to explore some of this material.
Yeah. I got to tell you, man, this has been a real pleasure. I'm a huge fan, and the film is Last Call. It really is. It's a nice piece. And, again, like I said, it's nice. It's nice to see you give a nuanced performance. I knew you had it in you, son. I knew you had it in you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, you're never too old to grow up.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Take care of yourself.
Thanks, buddy.